Well, Nancy Allebach is not only a local resident, but now a local author, and she joins us this morning. Good morning, Nancy. How are you?
I'm doing fine this morning. Thank you, Luke.
Yeah, good to see you this morning. Well, first of all, before we get into the book, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, of course, my name is Nancy. I was raised in Titusville most of my life, and I worked at the Titusville Hospital for all time counted about 36 years.
Wow.
I worked at the Titusville Herald for about 7 years, and I retired from the hospital about 8 years ago, and I've kept busy since then. I did a little bit of school bus work, and that I found very challenging. Actually, a little bit more, a little bit more challenging than working at the hospital.
Yes, probably.
Yeah, but then I just kind of totally retired. I worked at the bed and breakfast up the old Presbyterian home for a number of years, and that was just plain fun. That was a big party on the hill all the time. And when COVID kind of shut us down then, and we just could never get permission to reopen because they didn't know what to do with people who lived in the place where they worked. So every time we contacted them, they said, "Oh, we haven't made a decision yet." Oh. So Keith Bromley, of course, he said, "What do you think, Nance?" I said, "I think I'm ready to retire." And he said, "I think I am too." Neither one of us have stopped working yet, but we are considering ourselves retired.
Retired.
So was it during the pandemic that the author in you started to come out, or kind of explain that journey?
Well, when I worked at the hospital, I had a chance to meet this man, and I was so fascinated by his story, and it has always stuck in the back of my mind. And I actually have a box in my closet at home that I have maybe 6 or 8 stories in it that I have started. And I thought if the day ever came when I could find myself with enough hours to put into this, that I would dedicate myself to putting Daniel's story in print first. And so one day, the hardest part of writing anything is forcing yourself to go to that desk, sit down, and actually putting down the first few sentences.
Sure.
That's the hardest part. And once I did that, it just all came back to me, all of the memories. And
have you ever written anything before?
Well, other than I wrote a column for the Herald for a number of years, and actually, no, not in a concentrated form like this, no.
So did you, and before we get into the book, did you spend any time doing research on how to write? Did you do an outline or anything, or did you just kind of let it come naturally to you?
I just sat at the computer, and I just let all of the memories of that. Daniel was only in Titusville probably less than 72 hours. But I can so vividly remember him. He was such an outstanding person that I remember in so much detail about what it was like to be as close to him as I'm sitting, Corey. And I just kept writing out, and then it just came out. It just came out, the sentence after sentence after sentence. And when I got it all finished, I think I probably had 30 or 40 pages of double-spaced document. And then I went online and I began to look for how do you publish a book or how do you submit a book. And that's when I got some leads on different publishers and how they do it. And I was looking for something very specific in publishing. And I had always had the assumption that you write a manuscript and you send it to a publisher and they purchase it from you and they take it from there. But I found out in a big hurry that that's not the way they do it anymore. You can do it that way. If your name is Danielle Steele or James Patterson
Sure.
or Dolly Parton, and then the publisher does everything from there. You don't have to do anything else.
Right.
But unfortunately, if you're a no-name person, if you've never been published before, they just slide it aside. They don't want to look at it. So I began to look at other publishers, and I contacted 3 and began to look at how they did things. And that's how I came about to choose the publisher that I did.
Spending all those years at the hospital, I'm sure there's been many stories, but this one really stuck out to you, and we'll get into that now. Here's the book, Daniel, written by Nancy. So, Nancy, without spilling all the details, because we want people to buy the book and read it for themselves, give us a rundown on who Daniel was.
You know, I got to thinking, if most people in Titusville knew that this man was even anywhere near our quiet little town, they probably would be amazed. The reason for the title of the book is that Daniel was found laying in a ditch along the road in the middle of February, and all he had on was a pair of bib overalls and a t-shirt. He did have muddy sneakers on, but he was covered in snow and ice and mud, and a truck driver had come across him and stopped and called an ambulance, and they picked him up.
That's how we found Corey, by the way.
Oh, no. He had a little bit of similar features like Corey. He had...
Oh, gosh.
he was covered with beard, but his beard was down to here.
Oh, wow.
And his hair in the back was down to here. But he had a lot of living creatures in his beard.
Oh, my Lord.
Yes, and in his hair, and he was covered. His fingernails were way out, and they were curled under and black, and his toenails went out and covered and come back underneath and was touching his toes.
Oh, my gosh.
And he was one of the hairiest creatures I've ever seen in my life. And they brought him to our hospital because we were the closest hospital. It was up near very edge of the Allegheny National Forest, and he was semi-conscious, in and out, in and out. He was a huge guy. His head touched the top of the bed, and his feet hung over the bottom, and on both sides he was kind of hanging over. And he smelled horrendous. You could smell him just walking down the hall of the hospital. You could smell him before he even got to his room.
Oh, my.
But
I mean,
yeah,
the state you found him, when you describe him, and this was serious, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, I mean, that type of thought process went in, like, is this
Who
a
is-
person?
Is this a person?
the first thing I thought when I saw him, I thought somebody went in the woods and drug out Sasquatch, and they found him, and they
Wow.
wanted us to clean him up. But the reason for the name Daniel was he had no ID, no wallet, nothing to identify him except for in his pocket he had a tiny little scrap of paper, and it had the word Daniel written on it. It was all muddy and gooey from being out in the outdoors. And they put him through the emergency room, and he was in serious condition. And at the time, it was my job to call on every patient and check on their insurance, make sure they had a way to pay their bill. And so when I got to my office on the morning after he was admitted, and get this piece of paper, and it has one word on it, Daniel. And I thought, this isn't good. So I called the emergency room. I said, what's going on? You guys having fun with me here? They said, no. They said, you'll just have to go and get what you can. But they did tell me that he had never once opened his mouth from the time he came in, never talked to a nurse, doctor, aide. And you know, our hospital is, they're noted for their friendliness. Their housekeeping staff, their dietary staff, they can get anybody to talk.
Sure.
But Daniel, every time he went in his room, he threw the sheets up over his head. So I went up to see Daniel with my official clipboard and my official, you know, and I had a little speech I already made out, and I went by the nurses today saying, hey, what's going on, you know, over here in room 218? And they just said, give it your best shot. So I walked down to the room, and I walked in, and he was in the bed by the window, and there was an empty bed, and I kind of stayed over here by the door, just mostly due to the smell. And he made eye contact with me, and I said, Daniel, I'm from the finance office, and I was hoping you could help me fill in these blanks. Threw the sheets over his head. I thought, well, I've got all day, I can come back. So several times I tried to make contact with him, and every time he threw the sheets over his head, he did not want to talk. No ID whatsoever. And the nurses kept asking me, how'd you do? Did you get anything else? But they kept giggling, you know. I said,
because
no.
they knew you weren't
They
gonna
knew
get
I
anything.
wasn't getting anywhere. But he was in pretty serious shape, and the word on the hospital grapevine was that he was being transferred out of there because although we're a terrific hospital, we just weren't equipped to take care of what his needs were, which were very great. Nobody knew how long he'd been laying in that ditch. He was pretty much, his clothes were frozen to him. And they peeled those off, and they were laying in the corner, and they were just like a melted glob of mud and filth. But
Let's do this real quick. You're watching the Morning Drill on Stream Television and on Armstrong's Neighborhood Channel and listening to it on the Allegheny News Talk Sports Network. Nancy Allebach with us here this morning, author of the book Daniel, and we'll tell you how you can pick it up here in just a moment as Nancy's explaining who this person is. Just incredible, right?
He is.
You've never seen anybody like this before.
I hadn't, and I've got an incredible curiosity, intense curiosity, and I thought there's something about this guy that I just need to find out. Why were you laying along the road in a ditch, and why aren't you talking, or why aren't you communicating? And the doctor said he's shipping out. So at the time we had a program for charity care people, and I determined I was just going to take care of his bill through charity, and that was it. So I had made several attempts and got nowhere, and the nurses said, you know, he's shipping out. And so I made a last attempt to go up, and I said, Daniel, I said, we can't do anything for you here. The doctors say you're in pretty bad shape, and I said, they're going to ship you out. I said, maybe to Cleveland or Pittsburgh or maybe even Buffalo. And I said, they're going to take you out of here. And I said, I can't do anything for you anymore. I said, I'm going to take care of your bill through a local, the hospital charity program. I said, you don't have to worry about the bill. I said, but boy, we sure would like to be able to call your family and tell them that we had found you and that you were being taken care of, especially since you're very, very ill. The doctors, you know, are not giving you a lot of hope right here. And I said, I'll just, you know, the only thing I can do for you now is just pray for you. That's all I can do. I said, I'm going to be heading out here. So I left and I went home, and about 8:30, I don't know, 8:30, 9 o'clock that evening, the head nurse called me at home, and she said, Nance, she said, Daniel wants to talk to you. And I said, what? I said, people who work in the emergency room and in the lab and in the x-ray get called back, but finance people, they never get called back to the hospital after dark. And she said, well, if he's ready to talk, we come back. So it's 10 below zero. I just got a nice cup of tea, and I'm going to watch American Idol. And she said, well, he said he wants to talk to that there lady who was praying for him. So she said, will you come back? And I went back. So I went in the room and took my clipbook, and when I went by the nurse's station, they were all going, I said, what's up here? And they said, he wants to talk to you. So I went in, and that giant of Sasquatch was laying on that bed, and he took his hand, and I'll never forget, you know, he had claws that looked like they belonged on a raptor, you know. Mm-hmm. And he said, get over here, I need to kill you. And I thought, you need to kill me? And he said, yeah. He said, I need to kill you. And I said, Daniel, I said, that's not the way we do things up here. We're a hospital. We help people. And he said, everybody that ever said they were going to help me or praying for me said I killed them. And he evidently found a scrap of paper somewhere, and he pulled it out of under his sheets, and he had a list, and he said, here's the names of them, and here's where I buried them. And he said, come and get it. And I thought, he's coming to get that. No, I'm not going over there. I said, I don't need to have that. I said, we help people here. I said, we don't kill people. I'm thinking,
Yeah.
there's
So
a nurse out there somewhere, I hope.
So is it safe to say you could tell everybody that you did find out he was a serial killer?
I did find out that he
Wow.
was exactly who he said he was. He was a serial killer. He was an escaped convict from a prison down in the southern part of Maryland.
Wow.
And he has exactly who he said he was.
So if you want to read about that and how Nancy found that out and discovered that, you have to pick up the book. How can people find the book?
By the way, I did get away.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. You
Yes,
got
I
away.
did. I got away.
You
Yeah.
got away.
Good.
That's all that matters.
Yes.
So how can folks find the book to purchase?
The book was published by Zondervan Thomas Nelson, West Boat Branch, and they are marketing it in 89 different venues. You can get it on Amazon, Book Nook, BAM Books. Somebody told me the other day they got it someplace, and I said, where? Places I've never heard of. E-books, it's going to be on e-books, but most of the people I know are picking it up on Amazon. Our local Walmart, our local library has it. I just talked to Mary over there, and she
That's
said they
great.
just got it in. And it's a very small book. It's a very, very easy read. But I would like to say that Daniel was a very educated, published author. He was a beloved 7th and 8th grade school teacher.
Wow.
He was well loved by his students. And I said, hey, wait a minute, how do you go from being that to being an escaped killer, serial killer? And you got to read the book to find out.
Nancy, congratulations. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
sharing it with us.
Thanks, Nancy.
Thank you.